Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here, and today I thought I'd try something a little bit more avant-garde and do a bit of a random compare and contrast based solely on the arbitrary similarity between these two covers of Wolverine and all new Wolverine staring straight dead into the camera, and he's bearing one of his claws and she's bearing both of her claws. I thought this might, when I first conceived of this idea, I thought, oh, I'll roast this and praise this. But no, I dig this a lot. I dig the art. I dug the story. So this is just going to be kind of like looking at more purely at conventions, not trying to talk about SJW Marvel or anything, and maybe talking about maybe putting forward a couple thoughts about why the new characters may not be gelling with people. So as I was reading and enjoying All New Wolverine, my thought was, hey, I actually enjoyed this. I kind of dig it. And so why is she having a tough time connecting with people? Well, the SJWs would have it, you believe, that it's because people hate women. They don't want to see any women in their comics. It's a boys' club. We only want comics about boys, for boys, read only by boys. But the thing that snapped into my head was Jason Todd. Jason Todd was the second Robin, replacing Dick Grayson. And I think there were a lot of people who didn't like him back in the day. I was a little bit of a whippersnapper back then to get a feel for what the comics scene was like. But a lot of people I knew didn't like Jason Todd that much because they liked Dick Grayson, and Jason Todd replaced Dick Grayson. So the problem with replacement theory isn't that we hate diverse characters. The problem with replacement theory is we hate seeing a character we love go away, and then someone comes along and says, hey, I'm that character now. So even the reason I'm thinking about this so much is there's a sense in which it could make sense if Wolverine died, if Logan died, for X-23 to take up his mantle and honor his legacy because she loves this sort of father figure. He's her clone, which would, DNC's pointing out he's more like her brother, but his role in her life is more like older brother father figure, like a Batman to a Robin, right? So it makes sense for Dick Grayson to take on the mantle of Batman and continue the legacy of Bruce Wayne after Bruce Wayne is too old, right? A lot of people like Batman Beyond. Bruce Wayne isn't running around in the super suit. Terry McGinnis is. But these characters exist in a world where we all know if they die, they're not dead forever. And we know that's true for Wolverine right now because he's encased in adamantium, presumably alive inside it, waiting for Marvel to need a boost in sales and bring back Logan. Ta-da! Whole new series. Come on, everyone. Hop on board. I guess hopefully they aren't going to do that number one thing anymore now that they've done Legacy. So maybe that gimmick is in the past. But it doesn't feel like she's really fulfilling the role of Logan because we know that death is temporary in Marvel Comics. And the thought I've had since I was a little kid was they should have more stuff like Elseworlds and the Ultimates universe. You've heard DNC talk about how much he loves Elseworlds. I dug Elseworlds as a kid. Just seeing Batman as a pirate, yeah, whatever. Batman in Leonardo da Vinci time, I'm on board. And I think that Marvel should they have that like what if thing, but I don't know if what if was ever like as much of a thing as Elseworlds was. What if seems to be like, well, what if so and so married so and so, or what if so and so died in Civil War? I don't see him doing too much stuff like pirate Spider-Man. Now they do stuff like that because they have a multiverse, right? They'll have Spider-Man Noir in the 1920s. They'll have Spider-Man in the year 2099. They'll have Renaissance Spider-Man, right? So they do have these alternate universes where they try some stuff out. But I think that ought to be like there ought to be a place where they can play around with new universes and maybe let some fresh talent try some stuff, and where death can matter. So if you're doing, universe number 86B and it's the clown universe, everybody's a clown. Well, who cares if you kill off Wolverine in clown universe, right? You can kill off Wolverine and keep him dead, and then have X-23 take the place of all new clown Wolverine over old Logan clown Wolverine, and that's okay. And you could sell that story of a character rising to take the mantle of the older character who was a mentor to them. But you can't make that sale in a universe where, since the death of Superman, we all know that death is temporary, and these are marketing gimmicks to get people to buy the comic books when they inevitably bring back the old characters. It's a flaw of the two major superhero comic book companies in general that's contributing to this problem, not a hatred of diversity or a hatred of women in comics. So yeah, I'd like to see something like Elseworlds come back, Marvel to have its own Elseworlds line. They let, their crazy young talent try some experimental, wacky, creative stuff there, maybe make up some new characters, and then the Prime universe, Earth 2 and in DC and Earth 616 in Marvel. Those are the universes where no one's dead forever, and you always get the same stolid old characters that are iconic, and you don't fuss around with that too much. That'd be that's just my what if I were Elseworlds, where I'm an editor at one of these places and I have a role and whatever. Anyway, so that's just my thought on the diversity angle. So art, I dug both of these. Color. Okay, so the color on this page is working so good. I did my eyeglass test again, and I thought of something after I did the Spider-Gwen video that I should have talked more about, which is the idea of simplicity of color in comics. So when DNC talks about the 90s methods and the 90s color style, he's identifying people who are using a limited color palette intelligently. So this one, Wolverine #1, by comparison to this one, has a lot of kind of fill bucket effects where, there'll be little things where, okay, there's 2 colors on the bear, but most colors are solid blocks of color. This has very slight airbrushing things, but I actually think this limited degree of airbrushing really works well for the drawing style and still evokes the idea of a comic world because it's got a simple harmony of color. I want to be careful so I don't go on too big a tangent about the modernist painters and the pop artists who were rebelling against the modernist painters. But pretty much if you go to a museum and look at some postmodernists and some modernists, you'll notice that the modernists were fascinated with simple color and simple shapes and simple geometry. And the postmodernists who were, making comic book paintings like Roy Lichtenstein and Andy Warhol, and there's a giant painting of Spider-Man at the MoMA that I've got to figure out who made that so that I can go check it out again. But pretty much what the postmodernists were doing was they were kind of tweaking the nose of the modernists a bit by making giant comic book paintings. And the idea is, well, if simple color, line, and shape can be art, well, then comic books can be art because they have simple lines and shapes. Do you see how that's kind of a way of tweaking an abstract painter's nose a bit, who's maybe a little too high and mighty about their abstract art? You say, haha, comic books are art too, you silly modernists. That's what the postmodernists were doing, from my perception. So anyway, the reason that's important for me to remember is that the characteristic of comic art color is simplicity. Simple boxes, simple shapes, easily legible, colors that are easy to understand at a glance. And this, I think, is succeeding. Blue, green, blue, green, blue, green, blue, green, yellow, blue, green, green. Yellow and blue, green, blue, green, blue, green, green, yellow. It's good. Simple ideas. And even if there's a tiny bit of airbrushing and painting to it, they're blocks of color still. So praise on the color for this all new, all different Wolverine #1. And it'll have passages where there's full page stuff and they eliminate the gutters, but then they'll bring back the gutters to give you that rest again. And I'm glad that they do that. I think that the artsy-fartsy, let's turn the panels upside down stuff has to be within the context of a traditional panel layout so that we can appreciate the difference. This gets us into the rhythm, and then let's see what happens. Okay, ba-da-da-da-da, all right? So white is still used to give us a rest. And yeah, they're playing with the panels a little bit, but we've had a time of feeling what normalcy is like so that when they do this, then we can tell the contrast. And this is doing something artsy with the panel layout. Frank Miller's doing this thing where he's leaving a chunk of white space open on every page, and it's helping create this rhythm, and it's helping create this verticality. And I'm almost 100% sure, since this is a story that's mostly set in Japan, and Frank Miller, he wrote Ronin. I'm sure he was reading his Lone Wolf and Cub and all those old samurai manga for some inspiration. I'm sure that he is deliberately trying to create a feel of verticality to connect us on a kind of visceral level with the Japanese language, where it's, top to bottom, right to left. And that verticality is making a distinction from the do left to right, top to bottom feel that we get. Even though we're still reading left to right, the emphasis on vertical art is changing the feel of the world and the beautiful empty white space. You've heard DNC roast comics that have just a big bunch of blank white space, and the problem was they didn't have consistency. They'd have normal page, normal page, normal page, normal page, then they have like one page like this with a big empty spot, then normal page, normal page, normal page, normal page. Because of the consistency of this, that it's doing a bit with vertical panels on every page, you get into that rhythm and you accept the blank white space. This is clever. This is not doing artsy-fartsy panel compositions for the sake of doing artsy-fartsy panel compositions, and then it disrupts the story and breaks you out of the world and reminds you that I'm reading a comic book. This is a artsy panel composition which lends itself to the tone of we're in Japan. It's a kind of classic samurai story, and gives you rest that then gives context that helps you rest from the power and the intensity of the bright, fill bucket colors. They both had kind of, I want to find where Logan showed up in this to talk about that, because I thought that was kind of important. There's romance. She seems to have a thing for Warren. Great, where is it? Did I skip it? There we go. Okay. So yeah, there's actually romance for All New Wolverine. I think they could fix All New Wolverine by giving her her own superhero name. Like, find the Japanese word for Wolverine or the Latin word for Wolverine. Find some alternate language name for Wolverine, and then give her some sort of story or character reason for why she'd pick that name. Like maybe when she was a little kid, she heard that word and she didn't know what it meant and it resonated with her or something. I don't know. Give her some reason to have an emotional connection to a new name that is Wolverine-esque without being Wolverine, and we'll all accept her as her own character. Because I dug this, there's this idea of a compare-contrast where, yeah, he's praising her, he's complimenting her, but he's complimenting her on the basis that she wouldn't kill someone, and she hasn't gone down the road of killing people too easily. She's still hesitant to kill people. And he praises her by saying, you're really good at killing people, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it. It's his old saying, right? I'm the best I am at what I do, and what I do isn't very nice. You're the best there is at what you do, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. So even though this is an instance where Wolverine is saying to her, that could be interpreted as him saying, you're better than me, right? But this works in this context because he's still in a mentor context. Luke Skywalker eventually has to surpass Ben Kenobi and do what Ben Kenobi couldn't do. Now, the problem is, in a universe where Wolverine can't die, there's never an opportunity for the Luke Skywalker character to rise and take over the mentor's mantle. In a universe where Batman can't die, when is Dick Grayson ever going to take over the Batman mantle? He won't, because people want to read Bruce Wayne as Batman in kind of the mainstream continuity universe. But she can still be a known character in her own right who's had a mentor relationship to Wolverine and is a rising hero. I really dug all his expressions here. I dug the white panel grid layout, creating that rhythm. So much good stuff. So much good stuff. Expression, strong drawing, strong inking. One of the only things I thought was maybe just like a costume roast. There are some situations where she looks like she's bald. It's in the first panel. Like, she looks like a bald monk because she has that chrome dome skull and then the hair whipping up behind her. And I guess she's wanting to wear Wolverine's costume and honor Wolverine's legacy, but give her a little bit more of her own costume. Not just like black and white, color swap Wolverine costume. It'll help her feel like her own character if she has her own visual identity, where I can look at her in one instant and simplify her down to maybe just like a few simple strokes and say, that is X-23, don't call her All New Wolverine. Find some other cool code name for her that'll allow her to build herself up. So that's it. I mean, I didn't see too much in these to make a video on them all by themselves, other than I thought, they're good. Go read them. They were worth $1. I enjoyed reading them. I want to read more. And they're almost kind of like a hopeful symbol to me that even though there are different tools being used in the all-new Wolverine, there was some color sensibility in this and excellent underdrawing that gave this a similar dynamic warmth to the old comic book. So it's not just the conventions of 90s art or the limited color palette that 90s comic books had. It was the intelligence of the drawing and the intelligence of the colorist working with what they had. I need to talk about my art teachers really soon, maybe even in my next vid, because they taught me by giving me limitations. So it wasn't just draw whatever you want. They would give you a framework within which to work. And the point was the limitations they give you are supposed to be like problem-solving situations where you have to think about how to make the art with a limit on how many colors you can use or what kind of tools you can use or how much time you have. And that was supposed to push you to get good, to get smart, to work harder and work smarter, to get better at your art. And the limitation of the 90s forced the artists and the colorists to get good and think smart about their color harmonies and their color balance and their black and white balance. So we're spoiled on the new tools where we can use them unintelligently and not understand why the final product looks ugly. But there are still people in Marvel and DC who get color harmony, color theory, balance, harmony. Gosh, I gotta just talk a bit more about art so that I can stop going on all these art tangents when I talk about comics in the future. Anyway, this was kind of a fun little weird experiment. #1 Marmaduke fan. Love you guys, and I will catch you all later. Please do like, comment, subscribe, crush that bell. Be sure you're subscribed, and I love you dudes. Bye-bye.